Get on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the joint meeting of the Boone County Council, Boone County Commissioners, and elected officials and department heads related to the function of justice in our county to review the Justice Commission report. I'm Elise Nashal. I serve as the president of the Boone County Council, and I give you my personal regards and greetings this evening. Thank you for coming out tonight, because your presence here means that you really care about our county's future and how we make decisions in this process. We have great news to share tonight, and that is that Don Lamb, Vice President of our council, he was going to lead the meeting, but he is currently at the hospital for the very best reason to be at the hospital, and that is to welcome his first grandchild into this world. So that is happening even as we speak. So congratulations to Mr. Don Lamb. With that, I'm going to hand this meeting over to Councilwoman Jennifer Hofstetter to share the additional opening remarks and to guide us through this evening's agenda. Councilwoman Hofstetter.
Thank you, Elise. Good evening, everyone. Don prepared an opening statement, so I am not going to take credit for this, but I do want to read this to everyone as he intended to start with this. So we want to thank the commissioners.
I have no idea what they're reading. No, hers is muted.
Or she needs to mute.
Sorry. We want to thank the commissioners and the group of professionals on the scoping committee for the countless hours of work and preparation to get us to this point. We also want to thank the members of the Justice Commission and all the time and effort they have put into this project as well. Specifically, we want to thank Marsha Wilhoit and Aaron Williams for co-chairing this commission. We want to give a special shout out to Marsha, who's joining us online tonight. She is one tough lady who really cares about this county. This has been a challenging and difficult time for many here tonight, and there has been good, constructive criticism about this process. It is my hope and encouragement that tonight we focus on being thankful to live in a county where people are passionate about making good decisions for our community. We can agree to disagree if necessary and still move forward with respect for each other and the role we each play in this process. Our goal is to accomplish this meeting in 2 hours, and if we need follow-up tonight, that will be addressed. We will follow the agenda with the significant areas of this project to be discussed, and what from the report is agreed with and why, and what is not agreed with. The council, commissioners, and elected officials and department heads of offices related to the service of justice will discuss our way through the subjects of the agenda, and then there will be time for public comment. Hopefully, this discussion may answer some of the questions you may have as well. I'd like to start by having everyone up here introduce themselves. Start down here. Yes.
Hi. It's on. Good evening. My name is Ashley Albrecht. I work with Taft Law. I am currently in the capacity as representing the Boone County Council.
Good evening, Aaron Williams, Boone County Council.
John Reiner, Boone County Council.
Kevin Van Horn, Boone County Council, District 3.
Jennifer Hofstetter, Boone County Council.
Scott Maloney, K2M Design, Architect.
David Rainey, Owner's Representative for the County, Veritas Group.
Jeff Wolf, County Commissioner.
Mike Nielsen, Sheriff.
Bob Clutter, the County Attorney.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I'd also like to say that Tom Santelli and Don Lawson, other commissioners, are out here somewhere.
How's the lease then?
I don't know where Donnie went. There he is.
He's coming out.
Back with Brian.
Okay, thank you. The first item on our agenda is the jail cells, and if I'm going through the commission's report, I believe the first finding and recommendation regarding that was that the commission found that increased jail space is needed in order to accommodate the need for an increased number of secured beds. However, there was a question about the magnitude or the actual number of beds that we may need, and they suggested that there be additional investigation. So Jeff and Sheriff Nielsen, I'd like to open it up to you guys first. My understanding is there are a few things we need to touch on here. One being how COVID impacted the numbers, the jail population the last few years. Another one, which may be a good place to start, is helping people understand this 80% capacity rule too.
Well, yeah, I think the first thing we need to talk about, well, I want to make a statement about why K2M was selected as part of our team for this. K2M has spent the last, 15, 18 years developing these projects with the focus on rehabilitation and treatment. And that's really what attracted us to them in the first place, is because that's been the focus of the sheriff for the last several years as well. And so we thought hands down they were the best fit for what we were trying to accomplish, which is to return as many people back to the street in much better condition than they came in as possible. So the sheriff has been very successful over the years in his reduction of the recidivism rate, and I think that's something that this project focuses on, is continuing that goal. Having said that, we'll go back to, we had 2 different jail feasibility studies done. First one goes back to 2014 and the second in 2019. The one in 2014 and the one in 2019 both said that we needed a significant increase in the number of jail cells to carry us through the next 20 to 30 years. The one in 2019 suggested 395 additional cells. We looked at that and we decided as a group that we did not want to treat this as a warehouse, that we were just going to stick people in a cell and leave them there until their time is up. We wanted to do something that might help reduce this recidivism rate to help them return to society. And so we decided to start that focus back on this rehabilitation type facility. In doing that, we decided we didn't need those numbers of jail cells. So what we've done is we've created a project that is going to add currently 102 jail cells. It's going to add 82 beds in community corrections. Is that a little more? Just under 100. Okay. And it's going to give us the ability to do a lot of things in the jail as far as step-down unit. We still will maintain the original part of the jail, and it'll be used just like it is today for the more difficult prisoners. And so this will be a step-down unit to the new section of the jail. We'll also hold many of our female offenders, which is a growing population at the jail. And it also allows for those people to have some treatment and some work before they head into the community corrections program. This also has a section of this building that's almost a quarter of it that will be left open, and that section of the building is for future growth in jail cells if they're needed. And our plan is to have that available. We wanted to have that available so that in the future, if we need to add jail cells, it doesn't require another construction project. It requires bringing those cells in, which are brought in as a modular unit. They're set in, they're connected to the utilities, and they're ready to go. So that was the idea behind that additional area in this wing of the jail. We also wanted the ability to use that area for the time being, maybe for the next 10 or 15 years, by searching out grants and programs that we can maybe do some on-the-job type training in that area. So we hope to be able to maybe train in automotive skills or basic construction skills, possibly welding type stuff. But we left an overhead door in that section so that those items can be brought in, machinery can be brought in to make that happen. So that kind of gives you the rundown on the jail cells.
I'd like to address the COVID. The reason we saw an increase or a decrease in inmate population is because of the restrictions we put on actually allowing people in our jail over the last 2 years. That's been pretty critical. We took some very big steps to make sure that COVID, when it first came out, didn't get into our facility. When the second strain came through, we wanted to make sure that we continued those. And we just now recently lifted all of the COVID policies that we have. So the last 2 years, the data that I provided the commission, if you look on one of the charts in there, you'll see that the data I provided shows that we did definitely see a decrease in inmate population in the last 2 years, but it's because we caused that decrease. Now, what's going to happen is we're sitting on a lot of warrants that need to be served, that are going to continue to be served. We've opened up these restrictions, so we're going to see our population continue to increase. Since we've loosened them up a little bit, we've seen more increase in the last month. So we're at about 172 inmates this morning, and our rated capacity is 184. And that is how many jail cells that we have. I want to make sure that you all understand that by state law and federal law, that you should not go above 80% capacity, which is about 147, 150 or so. So we're going to start running over capacity. We're going to get back up to that 246 mark very, very quickly. So I think what K2M has designed, the commissioners and we have put together over the last 18 months or so, I think you'll see that it's going to be sufficient for the next 20 or 30 years to deal with the population increase in the county.
I also want to talk a little bit about population growth, Jennifer, as it relates to this population inside the jail. If you look at a population chart over the last 50 years in Boone County, in 1970 there were just a hair over 30,000 people in Boone County, and today we're just a little bit over 70,000. And that has been a pretty steady increase over the years, except for during the 90s there was not a lot of growth in Boone County. But after that, it's been steady ever since. So since 1990, from 1990 to 2000, it was a 21% increase in population. From 2000 to 2010, it was a 23% increase in population. From 2010 to 2020, we saw a 25% increase in population. So what that's telling you is with the growth that's in the county and the number of home starts that we have right now, that is going to be an exponential growth over the next 30 years. And we're going to see, probably in our next census, projections are there could be as many as 95 to 100,000 people in Boone County.
And one of the other things that I would like to mention too is there's a lot of misconception with the public about why are you housing people from out of the county? Well, we don't warehouse people. We don't charge for people that we use or have for another county. If you're coming through Boone County and you're from a different county or you're from a different state, you get arrested in Boone County, so you have to come to our jail, right? That's just the way it is. And I can't, as a sheriff, I can't say no to that. As a public, we can't say no. That is our statutory duty to make sure we house inmates no matter where they're from. So the misconception that's out there is that we are charging different counties to house their inmates, and that's absolutely not true. We may have one or two inmates that we do that once in a while because we try to help another county out, but we're not in the for-profit business when it comes to housing inmates.
That's good. Scott, did you have something you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, just from a reinforcing, beyond the borders of Boone County, I mean, when you look at the COVID numbers throughout the state of Indiana and even throughout the Midwest, a lot of sheriffs, like Sheriff Nielsen has done, they force their numbers down in order to be able to really control the impacts of COVID within the facilities. And what we've seen sort of on an entire Midwest trend is about 50% of the population was decreased during a course of 18 to 24 months in all of the jails. And just like everybody's experiencing, all of those numbers are increasing right back to where they were pre-COVID times that are causing an influx of detainees into our facilities. And I think it's also important to note when we talk about the number of jail beds and the previous reports that were saying somewhere near 400 additional beds. Our key stakeholder group made the decision to reduce the number of beds on purpose because of the types of programs that we were going to be implementing and the types of treatment that we really wanted to do. I mean, Commissioner spoke on it very well, but there's a lot of effort that's going to go into the operations of this facility that are going to treat these people because we want to make sure that this population continues to stay down and we reduce our recidivism in our facilities. So,
I just have a few clarification questions. So the 80% capacity, is that a federal or a state requirement that
I think it's a state requirement.
State requirement, and so if we're over 80% capacity, then are we at risk of being classified as non-compliant with Indiana jail standards?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure I heard this correctly. So there's 214 beds, but 184 of those are secured beds.
They're
That's
in
what
the
it's rated
housing
for.
unit. The other beds are in what we call our booking or holding area.
Okay, and I'm assuming we probably shouldn't be using those outside of like booking or holding.
They do
or-
not count for your housing.
Okay.
Correct.
And so then our 80% is actually 147 inmates.
Correct.
Okay, so if we're looking at the average monthly population, even in 2020 during COVID and 2021, we weren't that far off from that 80%. Is that
That's correct. If
Okay.
you look at the charts that I provided to the commission for 2017 to 2021, if you look at the average monthly population, and then the highest daily population, the 2017, it was 208, and 246 as far as the highest daily population. And that trend continued in 2017, 18, and 19. And then you can clearly see in February and March of 2020, when COVID hit, we put the restrictions in. You can see the drastic decline in us trying to get people out of jail and put in different programs, and thanks to community corrections and probations, because without them, we wouldn't have been able to do that. We were able to put ankle bracelets on people and get them out there and get them home and get back to being productive members of society. So that data clearly supports the COVID, and now if you look at 2022, we're gradually starting to trend back up.
And I apologize, I meant to say at the beginning that I wanted to invite members of the commission who aren't directly sitting up here to, if you have comment or questions, please step up when we're discussing your section. With that being said, Prosecutor Eastwood.
I have a question.
Oh,
So, I think the question, have we ever been flagged by the state or the feds about this 242 number?
Yes,
When-
we actually
when-
have. In the state jail inspection, it's been brought to our attention.
So, have we been fined or have we been warned by a judge, hey, you're overcrowding? Has that ever happened to us?
No.
Have the feds ever came in and said, hey, if you don't get this under control, this overcrowding, we're going to implement restrictions on you?
No, but that's what we've tried to avoid.
So, but we've never had it happen, correct?
No, just from the state jail inspector.
Okay, and then as I'm looking at the report, page number 8, for those who are following along, it says that the average monthly population at the Boone County Jail, you see a decrease. So in 2018, pre-COVID, it was 209. In 2019, it was 206. In 2020 and 2021 during COVID. So it looks like those numbers were going down. And I think Commissioner Wolf made a statement about the increase in population, and the prosecutor, I know we've talked about this multiple times, but there's an increase in the population of Boone County. Is that a direct correlation that an increase in population means that there's an increase in crime? Have we seen that? Like, hey, we have more people that are becoming residents of Boone County. So because of that, we're seeing more people in jail, because if you go to page 10 of the report and you look at the number of individuals incarcerated at the Boone County Jail, we average less than 40% of the residents around 40% of the individuals incarcerated actually live in the county. So while we've seen this increase in population, it doesn't appear from the data that there's been an increase in crime. Or am I reading that wrong?
I don't have the data to support the fact, I haven't ran that data, but I think if you look at population versus increase in crime across the United States, that's a trend. You increase the population, you're going to see a trend in crime.
Right, all right.
If you also look back from 2014 through 2016, the numbers in the jail were much lower. And so that trend has been higher, even though COVID set it back. That trend was up from about 167, I think, in 2015 to the 200 number for a consistent number of years after that.
Yeah, so I'm going off the data that was presented to us for the past 5 years of 2017 to 2021. And again, on page 10 of the report, if you look at that, the average will show you that less than 40% of the individuals incarcerated are actually residents of Boone County. So I think that's something to note, in particular, that while we're a growing community and our population is increasing, I think we've been rated as one of the safest communities in the country, if I'm not mistaken. Boone County and several of our municipalities, Lebanon, Whitestown, and Zionsville, and others. And forgive me, I should have said this at the beginning. I want to give a special acknowledgement and thank you, even though he's not here today, to Mayor Gentry for allowing us to have this facility. So thank you to the mayor and the staff here at Lebanon. But back to the discussion ahead, I think that's something as we move forward, we need to take the data that is presented to us, that we have in front of us, and make sure we're making an informed decision. Once again, going back to the report on page 10, that data shows that there's not been what I would consider an increase in crime, as there's been an increase in the population. So back to you, Councilor Hostetler.
I would like to follow up, Mr. Williams, to that, because just because you live in Boone County doesn't mean that you're actually going to commit a crime here. I think it's important to understand, too, that we have people traveling from Indianapolis, Lafayette, coming to work here. So those people that come and travel here sometimes aren't always good people. Just because they doesn't live here doesn't mean they're not going to commit a crime too, right? So I think you got to look at that, and I think we can pull up what we call the calls for service data and really look at that trend of calls for service and crime data. I'll start putting that together.
Yeah, and I'm not refuting that whatsoever. I'm going back to the point that was made, that we're increasing the jail because our population here in the county is growing. So my point is, I definitely hear what you're saying. There's obviously a lot more pass-through that's happening. What I'm saying is, there's not a direct correlation that shows that an increase in the population in the county warrants an increase in beds because more crime is happening.
So I think I hear what both sides are saying. You know, we're saying obviously just because you don't live here, if you commit or alleged to have committed a crime here, we still have to house you here.
It's just harder to hear you.
Oh, sorry. And Aaron's question is, I'm not seeing because the population increases, we're seeing more crime here. I think maybe two questions that kind of leaves us with is, or at least I guess my thought is, as more people move here, are we in a way more attractive for more crime to be committed here, whether it's residents that live here or people coming here to commit crimes? Which I don't know if that data even exists. But the other, my mind also goes to with, like with the Amazon plant and all these other business developments that are happening, that has the potential of, I hate using the phrase like attracting crime, but pulling that over here into Boone County. And I don't know if that data exists, but that's kind of where my mind goes when we're talking about population increasing.
Prosecutor Eastwood, are you out there? I think that's an important aspect from a prosecutor's office, because you've seen an increase in the filed cases, correct? Dramatic increase.
So within our office, I always talk about pre-pandemic and pre-pandemic and during pandemic, right? So through up to the pandemic, we saw a large increase in filed cases. Correct. During the pandemic, it went down, and then it started to go back up last year. If you want to look at this year's numbers, just talk about this year through the first 5 full months. Our major felony cases are up by about 50%. That's level 5s and above. And those are things like armed robbery, things of that nature. To answer your question, Jennifer, I think you talked about, are we more attractive to commit crimes? We had 5 people arrested in a 3-week period in Whitestown for armed robbery, all from out of town. We had a person who was arrested also in Whitestown, but they made the news for bomb threats, also from out of town. So I think some of the major crime, we are attracted. One of the things I will say about the crime rate, COVID really had a huge impact on that, and that we've seen, because a couple of different reasons. One, all departments are dealing with staffing level issues. It doesn't matter if you're the Sheriff's Department, Whitestown, Zionsville, or Lebanon. They all have staffing level issues. And our number of contacts police officers are making with people have gone down during the last 2 years, and they've not rebounded yet. As a result of that, the number of misdemeanors filed by our office, which is the bulk of what we do, that has gone down. But it's all related to drunk driving while suspended, operating never single license, possession of marijuana cases of that nature. Those have all gone down due to officers. It's my belief for 2 reasons. One, officers got used to not making as many traffic stops or contacts during COVID, because they were kind of said, hey, everyone with COVID, someone's going a little bit over if they're a little stop sign. You don't stop everybody. I think that kind of mentality set in.
Are these for the misdemeanors you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that kind of mentality set in. In addition to that, they all have staffing issues. So the number of contacts have gone down. So our misdemeanors have not rebounded to pre-pandemic levels, but our major felonies have. And just in talking with the Sheriff's Department and Zionsville, I know that this time next year, not Sheriff's Department, Zionsville and Whitestown, they expect, no, it's Zionsville and Sheriff, I'm sorry. They expect, if fully staffed, we're going to have 10 to 12 more patrol officers between those two places and investigators on the road doing cases. So just like when you passed the lit tax that enabled us to get more officers, we saw an increase in filed cases. We're going to see an increase in other types of cases. It's those crimes you come across, like I said before, where it's officer contact initiated.
You made a comment that filings were impacted by COVID because traffic stops declined. Would it be fair to assume that charges that would arise from domestic violence incidents or child abuse or neglect were also down because?
No, those
Okay.
went up. Cases related to, say, sexual abuse of children or child abuse of children rose during that time, and those have not had any type of decline.
Okay.
In addition to that, one of the striking ones I found out the other day, which I was kind of shocked to see, is that we've seen a huge increase in juvenile in the last 3 years, by 25%, and there was no decrease during the pandemic on juvenile charges whatsoever. I didn't know that until just a few days ago.
The sheriff mentioned earlier that there's outstanding warrants. Can you just touch base on the number of outstanding warrants and what you did to alleviate some of the jail population as well?
Well, so at the beginning of the pandemic, one thing we did for a very short period of time was we held certain cases back to file about a month or two to wait to see what was going to happen because we knew the jail was going to take certain people. After about a month or two, we said we couldn't hold off, and we filed those with warrants. However, we did change. We kind of looked at what the jail was doing and who they were accepting, and we were making calculated decisions about, well, if they won't take this person, is it okay to do a summons? And so we would do a summons. That worked and it didn't work. It's caused two problems. One, a lot of people have failed to appear. As a result of doing summonses, people don't, they're supposed to come in a week, 2 weeks, even 3 months later, they don't come into court. There are a lot of outstanding warrants for those people. In addition to that, one court in particular, if you send them a summons, they don't set that first hearing on that person who alleged to have committed that crime for 3 months. That's unacceptable to me for a victim of a crime. Let's say you were in a theft case and the judge doesn't set it for initial hearing until 3 months after the case is filed. That's unacceptable. So we have reversed what we were doing during the pandemic, and we are filing more cases, not fully going back to what we did pre-pandemic, but we're going back to more pre-pandemic charging decisions in terms of warrants or summons.
Is there still a number of warrants that haven't even been issued yet?
No.
No, okay.
We always have cases in review.
Okay.
And that's one of the biggest problems. I talked to previous prosecutors all the way back to Becky McClure. It's always been a problem because of staffing issues, getting through cases. Like we get a report from the Sheriff's Department and looking at it and making charging decisions and/or follow-up. It's always been a problem to get some of those cases done. We typically have about 100 cases in some type of review status at one time.
But there are warrants out there that haven't been served.
Oh, there are a ton of warrants out there.
A lot of warrants that haven't been served.
Yeah.
And we're trying. We're working on looking at those. I have an intern looking, trying to compile those to try to see is there any of these cases that are, what can we do with these? It's slow going.
Yeah. I just want to go back, thank you for your comments. I just want to go back to it. Once again, we're talking about the jail cell piece here. So Prosecutor Eastwood just gave some very clear examples that the individuals who were committing these crimes, they weren't part of Boone County. And the initial assertion was that because we're growing in population, we need more jail cells. Once again, as he just clearly articulated, the individuals that are moving here are not the ones committing the crime. It's people who don't live in the county. And I just want to make sure that, at least I say, I have family and friends that work at the Amazon facility, and they go there to earn a living wage for their families. I know they're not coming through the county to commit crime. So I know you weren't insinuating that these folks are doing it, but I just want to make it clear, hey, because I think you said they can attract crime, those types of facilities. I know people who work at these places personally, and I know the ones that I know personally haven't. And I don't know if we've seen that, Prosecutor Eastwood, where we can say, hey, these individuals that we're arresting, there's a direct correlation to say they work at these warehouses, where I think that's a broader conversation with the corporate folks anyway. But nonetheless, the conversation at hand is about the jail cells and the increase in the population as a direct correlation to that. And I want to just be cognizant of time because.
Let me clarify, Jennifer, on that just a little bit. The assertion that the growth is because of population is not our assertion. That came from both of the studies from DLZ. That is professionals in this field who do this work to project numbers, and they're the ones that came up with this number. This is not a number the commissioners came up with. I'd also like to say that adding 102 jail cells to our current facility takes us to a total of 286 secured beds. At 286 secured beds, at 80% rule that Jennifer spoke of, puts us at 228. During 2017, 2018, and 2019, we were over that 228 number, a significant number of months during those years. One of them, the sheriff mentioned, was 246. So even with the additional jail cells, that is an issue that could come up, that we could be above the 80% rule. And so I think what we're saying is that for those years, 17, 18, and 19, the years prior to COVID, we were above the recommended level in our jail with population by about 45 to 50%. I'm sorry, 25 to 30%, not 45 to 50. So if you look at just those pure numbers, for those years, it was consistently about 50 to 60 people above what we should have had.
Just to clarify that too, even though we could be at that capacity, our hopes are that we are not, and that's the reason we are asking community corrections to join us so we can have a step-down unit. So it's easier to move these folks into the work release programs, into the community corrections, into putting ankle bracelets on them and getting them back into productive members of society. So we're trying to do everything we can on the secured side, stepping them down slowly in this unit, and then walking them over and stepping them over to community corrections and probation.
So the last thing is I'm sorry, what's the gentleman from K2M?
Scott Maloney.
Scott, can you send us detail that outlines with data why we're going to see, because it sounds like you guys came up with this, how you all came up with the conclusion that an increase.
DLZ did 2 studies in 2014 and 2019. Both were provided to the council.
I got that.
Did you guys look at the National Institute of Corrections? There's a ton of information from them about county population
Yeah,
trends.
I'll definitely look at it,
Okay.
if you can send it to me. So did your report from K2M outline an increase in population having a correlation to crime increase?
So I'll tell you, just based upon my experience, I did not prepare those studies. That was by another company in 2014 and 2019.
Right.
So, but from my experience, one of the data points that we study, I have for 25 plus years of my career, and, perfect, the National Institute of Corrections basically states that, there is a correlation amongst population, within a county as the population is growing or declining, that impact on jail beds. It is just a standard point of analysis that we go through.
Nope, I appreciate that. I would love to see, if you all could, because we've hired you all to do this, some data that represents Boone County. I get the national, but this is Boone County, you got Marion County. Once again, we've been rated as one of the safest communities in the country to live in, so I'd love to see that. And then if you look at the bottom of page 7, it says that if you add the current beds in the Boone County Jail, 214, and add the 102 new beds, the total number of beds after expansion would be 316. But in our work group questionnaire, it states that the total number of beds after expansion would be 301. So there's a difference in that. So where's the disparity in that?
Is that the difference between the holding beds and the work release beds?
Yes.
It's rated at 184.
I get that. I get the rated beds, but I'm telling you still, the total number, there's still a 15-bed difference.
Right, that's the intake area,
So are there 316 beds or 301 beds?
301 beds. You can't count the intake area, that's the place where you're processing people.
Right, because I'm counting total beds.
It's not a figure that matters when it comes to rated beds.
It is not a figure
I
that-
think it's just a difference in definition. I get what you're saying, like.
I'm just saying, it may not matter, but there's a cost. Like, I don't know how much a bed costs, but if we're having
Right, and I
316
think if we're
beds.
going through and counting every single
Yeah.
bed, no matter where it's at in the jail, it's gonna be the 314, but from like following the definitions for jail standards, where it's 301, if that, yeah.
Okay.
I does that answer, I guess let me phrase it this way, does that answer any remaining questions about this topic, jail cells, and/or is there anything else that the scoping committee wanted to clarify on that topic? Or anyone from the commission involved in that part of it?
I know at the beginning, Mr. Wolf mentioned something about a quarter of the building. Is that late? Is it going to come later? He was kind of giving like he started in the jail cells, but he said a quarter of the building will be left open for future expansion. So I don't know if that falls under your question, if we want to talk about jail cells.
Technically falls under this agenda item. Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So you said a quarter of the building will be left open, 25% of the building will be left open,
Okay, there's
right?
availability for a future 48 beds expansion.
Okay.
We are building the shell for it, so we are just able to insert a modular unit to be able to accommodate additional beds if that ever becomes needed.
So just one quick follow-up. I think you bring up a great point. So the current jail, as it was built, was actually designed to attach modular units. How much research did you all do to see how that would reduce the cost?
That's exactly what we're doing.
So we're taking the current jail and just attaching
Yes.
as it was designed?
Yeah, we're not taking the jail down. That was never suggested.
Not taking it down, but I think, and forgive me, I don't want to put him on the spot, Sheriff Brennan has been helping me trying to understand this. He was there when the current jail was built. I thought we could just attach a wing because the way the underground was built, but that would reduce the cost significantly. Is that what you all are adding, exactly that same way?
So we have an existing housing unit, and we have created another housing unit directly above it, right? When you look at the site plan, if you're looking down on it, just right to the north, there is another housing unit that connects through the existing corridor system. Right. It's the most effective way that we could put the housing together.
Nope, that's fair. And then the last piece, I promise, is because it came up. We talked about building or searching out grants and programs for on-the-job training. So if we don't have grants to pay for that, we'd have to pay for it out of county resources, the county fund, right?
Or not do it.
Right. Or not do them? So if we wouldn't do them, would it make sense to still build the jail at 25%?
It does. Because the cost of doing it now is significantly lower than when those added beds are going to be needed.
So with the average inmate being in the Boone County Jail, according to the figures that we got, less than 65 days, I have a brother who's an electrician, I have other, family members who have went through the auto mechanic program. Can someone get a welding certificate in less than 60 days? Or mechanical? And my point is, if we're not going to do these because there's no feasible way to do it from a cost standpoint, we probably shouldn't build it. And going back to it, if 40% or less of the inmates in the jail live in Boone County, that means I'm training someone who's going to take that skill, so the taxpayers are paying for somebody to take that skill set and apply it somewhere else where that tax dollar isn't staying back in here. So looking at it once again, how do we reduce the footprint so the tax burden isn't as heavy on our constituents? Because I sit on the board at Ivy Tech and I go through this on a monthly basis, what culinary and vocational programs make sense. Even in Ivy Tech, you can't get a certification in most of these programs in less than 2 years. And our inmates aren't here that long.
Let me address a couple of things there. I think very importantly, you need to understand from an operational standpoint that I can't pick and choose what inmates want to go into certain programs. I have to be open with every program that we have, whether those inmates are from our facility or from out of the county or from out of state. I have to offer them the programs and they can do that. We've had a lot of success working with different vendors in our county. From a mental health standpoint, most of the programs that we have are all with partnerships with Inwell, Aspire, and some of those. And we've been working with Haas and some of those people to try to bring those programs in. I think we have a lot of companies, a lot of educational opportunities out there that they are willing to work with at no cost to the county, but we have nowhere to provide them right now. So that's the important piece to understand, that I think people want a partnership. We have a meeting next Tuesday with a company called Hire to be able to come in, very big in Marion County, to be able to come in and work with these clients so that when they leave, they have some type of education, they can get a resume, they can get a job. So I want to make sure everybody understands that I can't pick and choose who I offer services to. I have to offer services and programs to everyone.
And I think that's great. I just go back to it. Look at the job market now and how many folks are struggling to find, these vocational jobs, electricians, welders. And if we're going to train them, we need to be paying, these practitioners that amount. So if we don't find grants for them, we have to pay for it. But also, I fully understand, if it's not even feasible for someone to obtain one of these certifications, because I think we should offer it to anyone, but if they're not in the jail even 100 days, it's kind of like by the time they get in, they serve their time, they get early release, whatever it may be. My thought process is not trying to take away these programming from people, but if we can reduce the footprint of the jail, that ultimately reduces how much of a tax burden we put on constituents, because it's just not a feasible program, we should explore that. Because once again, looking at the data, if it's less than 50 or 60 days that someone is in jail, even on-the-job training, it's tough with that.
Yeah, but one of the things that's important to me, and I look at it a little bit differently, is that we're giving them an opportunity to start that program in our facility, just like we do a drug program, an AA program, or anything else. They may not finish it in there, but when they walk out, they've got the skills and the ability and the knowledge to know that they can continue on with that education, they can continue on with that AA program, or drug alcohol program, whatever it may be. So it's a start that these clients need inside our facility, and it gives them that motivation when they leave to continue that on.
I love that. I think one thing that we could possibly explore, and I'm happy to help have this conversation, let's partner with the folks that are leading these programs outside of the jail to say, hey, how can we effectively get you started in the program, our inmates, before they leave, versus saying we're going to start a welding shop? Because at the end of the day, when I think about the folks that are electricians and that are plumbers, it's a lot of classroom time. Mr. Eastwood?
I want to comment on one thing. I think looking at the average length of stay is the wrong metric. You need to look at the median length of stay. I would ask that we get that number, because that's a better barometer of what's going on at the jail. The average length of stay is, we'll file 2,400 cases this year. And then there'll be I don't know how many probation violation warrants to be served this year, but there'll probably be about 4,000 bookings at the jail, maybe 3,000 bookings at the jail. A lot of those people will be booked in and booked out right away, which lowers that average. What I think you need to know is what is the median length of stay, and then of those people that are actually in the jail for long term. Because if you have a constant like 200 people, the same 150, 200 people, versus the other 2,000, 3,000 are being booked out right away, that average length of stay is skewed by that number. So that's all I want to say.
So I think we spent almost an hour just on the first agenda item, so I'm going to try and move us along because we don't have 7 hours tonight. I think this is a great discussion. I think that's a great idea about how do we get them started and then continue these certificates outside of the jail, but my assumption is we still need the space. And so I think this is a conversation that can continue and maybe not be a hindrance to the project, but just things that we need to still continue as it's developing. The next agenda item is jail administrative space. In looking at the report, it's my understanding that was recommended, the jail administrative space was recommended. So I don't know if there's still outstanding questions that we need to address, or if we can skip over that agenda item.
I just think, put it into context, myself, quite a few folks have been out to the jail. There are literally individuals working in closets, so we want to support that. So, and if you read the report says an increase in the jail space and administrative space. It doesn't dismiss the entire project, but I think, to your point, that's a pretty known consensus of yes, extra administrative space. What that looks like and entails, once again, that's a discussion for later to get into the nuances of it.
Next agenda item is community corrections and probation. The report recommended that basically we needed additional investigation to talk about the need for a female work release versus continuing to use Hendricks County, and additional investigation to determine intent from the prosecutor and the court to utilize the additional space. And I just want to start out by saying, Kent, you can probably weigh in on this more. I think the prosecutor's office and the courts can say, yeah, absolutely, we have an intent to use it, but we can't comment on every single case and give you a guarantee that that space is going to be used. It'd be pre-judging, pre-ruling on an alleged crime. Prosecutor Eastwood, do you have any comment on the community corrections and probation?
As a prosecutor, we want to have all means to which to sentence people to appropriate sentences, and work release would be a very appropriate thing to have in our community. I will say as a general rule, I feel that the sentences we are getting are not the sentences that I want as a prosecutor. I wish they were harsher. I wish more people were being sent to prison, put on work release, or being put on community corrections.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I wish some of the sentences we would get were harsher. But that's more of a thing of the judges. The judges pretty much sentence everybody. Most of our plea agreements, when it comes to the major crime, are ones where we argue or advocate. We don't have a set term where it's, hey, you're doing 30 years. It's usually a range where we advocate for something, and unfortunately, I don't feel like we're getting the sentences that we want or we believe we should be getting, but I respect the judge's decisions. But having those things are all things that we need to have the ability to do, because the other option is putting them on probation. And probation, at times, what we're seeing now, the average person who I do an initial hearing on in the circuit court has 2.1 pending cases at the time of that initial hearing. So that's their third pending case. So what's happening is it just becomes a revolving door where people are getting out, picking up new cases. And so, we got people in our system right now that have 3 pending. The average person in circuit court who is still in jail at the time of their initial hearing, they have 3 pending cases, whether it's probation, community corrections, or a new pending case.
Do you know, or does anyone know, Michael Nance might have been the best person to answer this question. In looking at Hendricks County, I'm assuming there's a maximum number of people they can accept for work release. Do we know if they give preference to Hendricks County convicted work release people over a Boone County request to have someone go there? Okay.
Oh, you mean based on because of where they live in the county?
Yeah,
Like,
they're
you're a
gonna
resident here.
keep their, well, not a residence, but you were convicted here, we're
I
gonna
get
keep
what
you
you're
here,
saying.
and so now we don't have enough to accept
Someone else who-
a county
Person,
right,
who may be.
or like a Boone County, hey,
Yeah.
can this person do work?
It's called a courtesy transfer.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And courtesy transfers are on a case-by-case basis, and it'll depend on how full they are, how full they aren't, and where they are. I will say our judges are allowed to require our community corrections to monitor someone in an adjacent county.
Okay,
Under the law of the state of Indiana, you can require community corrections, our community corrections to go to Hendricks County, to go to Marion County, go to Hamilton, Clinton, to monitor them there. That's an issue. It's a huge issue for the community corrections. I'm not going to speak for them, but it does become an issue. But yeah, those are things we're always having. There's no guarantee they'll take somebody.
our judges, I'm assuming, cannot tell Hendricks County Jail, hey, this female is gonna do work release at your facility, you have to take
they
her.
cannot.
Okay, and so if they don't have a space for one of our Boone County female work release candidates, that person might be out of luck then.
Yeah, so when it comes to females, because we don't have a female work release ability here in Boone County. If a county does not do a courtesy transfer, that is not an option for a judge to sentence that person to such.
I think I'm sorry.
No.
To the community corrections and probation piece, so the judges have, it's pretty much a majority of their say of what they do. I think what we have to take in consideration here, once again, is that there is sentencing reform happening at the State House, where, whether we like it or not, they're trying to keep people out of jail. They're literally trying to put them into programs like community correction and probation where they're not incarcerated. I think I support, I don't want to get into specific details about any particular case, but I do support individuals being put on community correction probation if it keeps them with their family, if that makes sense, and they're not a severe threat to the community. What is interesting about this in our findings is, as we spoke to the folks at community corrections, I think there's an 800 or 900% increase in the number of beds that are at the current facility to what is being proposed. And before COVID, I think there are 12 beds, maybe 15, and those are at a less than 60% utilization rate even before COVID. And I think another thing to keep in mind is according to the community corrections folks, that if we increase the number of beds as proposed, there's an additional $1.2 to $1.4 million increase in staffing that they will need if we're at our capacity to just cover the cost of maintaining that facility. So I go back to it, how can we reduce the footprint? So if we're putting more people in community corrections, does that mean we can reduce the number of jail beds? Because, once again, hey, we're not locking you up, we're going to put you in community corrections. So if we're putting you in community corrections, do we need less jail beds? Or is it the inverse of that?
So a few comments. So I know the jail feasibility study recommended way more beds in the jail than what they're actually adding. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, to account for that, it's because we're trying to not keep people in jail and move them to like work release, and so there was a need for more beds there. And Kent, you might be in a better position to comment on this. I know when I was doing criminal defense way back when, it was almost like you were on a wait list for, if you were approved for work release, you had to wait until there was a bed available because there was only 12.
So community corrections typically is for people who have been sentenced, who are serving sentences. And typically, those are for level 6s, which we can house at the jail now, or at DOC, or people on level 5s, which are only housed at DOC. So the question really becomes, the majority of people who are being on community corrections, what level of felony are they serving? So if they're serving level 5 felonies, they would never be housed in our jail, all right, as a sentence. So you cannot reduce, if you expand and put more level 5 felons and above on work release or community corrections, that has no impact on your jail. However, if you were to expand it in level 6s, it might have an impact on your jail. I don't know how many people are serving executed sentences on level 6s at the Boone County Jail.
Are level 6s now going back to DOC per state?
That's an option now. It's not mandatory. It's
Right.
an option the judge has under the new law as of July 1st.
But there's a preference to keep people local to continue any services they may be receiving.
It's
Is
an
that
option.
But it is, I get that it's an option, but a judge could say, hey, I can send you to DOC.
Yes.
And that could alleviate pressure at our jail from a staffing standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
It could.
Okay.
But we
You
can't
gotta
make
get
the
judges
judges
to do
do that.
No, I'm just saying, I'm looking at it as like, hey, are we exploring all of the possibilities and alternatives? Because if the judges are ultimately responsible for the quote unquote, if there's jail overcrowding, because they're the ones sentencing, normally it comes back to them. So I'm sure they're looking at it with their clerks respectively to say, all right, this is how many people we have incarcerated.
They will not look at it like that. They'll look at it on a case-by-case basis based on the individual.
Yes, yep, and
Got it.
I don't think they're allowed to consider,
Yeah,
you
they
can't, there's sentencing factors, and you can't say, well, I'm not gonna put this person in jail or send them to DOC because the jail is overcrowded. That would come right back down on appeal.
Yeah.
Two quick questions. There was a question about training, and if someone is in a training program, like a welding program or something, pre-sentencing, while the case is still pending, would it be considered work release to continue and finish their certificate?
I don't know.
Okay, because I know there was a question.
Some of our programs, the judge offer time less, right? So
Where's the
that's
question
an
coming
option
from?
there
What was it again?
that comes from the judge.
So your question was, if they're only there 60 days, what happens with their training? My question was, well, what if they do finish, but they're gonna move into work release? Does continuing in that training count as their employment for work release?
I don't know, but they would,
Okay.
if they were in community corrections, they would be allowed to continue with that training.
Okay, because that would be a way to
And a lot of
finish.
times, that would be part of the sentence. You are sentenced to successfully complete or make reasonable efforts to complete X.
Yes. So one last question, and then I want you to address the cost side of this. You said there level 5 and higher, no impact on work release. What about people within the community CPT program, the community transition, or CTP?
Yeah, so community transition program are people that have been sentenced to the Department of Corrections and they're getting close to their out date. And then the DOC gives us sentence notifications where we try to make recommendations whether or not to allow them to come back early, like 3 months early, to have a transition period from DOC into regular life. So they're not just let out the door of the jail, of the prison, of Indiana Department of Corrections, and just walk back out So we look at those on a case-by-case basis, that having work release and expanded home detention for those would be helpful. My understanding is when they do that the DOC pays for those costs.
Okay, and
At least a good portion of it.
so, because you made a comment about level 5 and higher, that it doesn't impact work release, but it is a possibility that we could be getting some level 5s and higher coming back as part of the community transition program who needs a work release bed.
And typically, those would be people that are, would not be a nonviolent crime.
Okay.
And people with no history, and people who were ultra successful at DOC, had no write-ups, had nothing, were perfect at DOC,
Okay.
those types of people.
Okay, but, so there may be need for beds for,
That is a possibility.
okay. Will you address the cost questions that
The
Mr.
sheriff
or,
is saying 395 extra.
What was the question, Jeff? I'm sorry.
the operating costs that you had?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
there's a few different factors that come into community corrections. I mean, one of the things that we started out on very early on was developing this continuum of care as it kind of come through, the jail out into the public with probation periods. And, with community corrections, it's a less expensive model to operate than operating jail beds. And so, if you're spending $500 a square foot in a jail, you're spending $400 a square foot for the community correction space. And so, right out of the gate, it's a lesser it's a lesser cost associated with building those community corrections beds. They also operate traditionally at about 65% of the cost of a jail, right? And so when you are able to layer on the jail, the community corrections, we kind of have that continuum. We step down in price and operating costs each time. So if we did not have these community corrections beds, we would have them, in the jail, and our costs would therefore be even higher than what they are with 100 beds, 102 beds that we're anticipating today. So this has been a kind of a methodical way of us approaching this to be able to, make that cost efficiency the best that we can.
No, I appreciate it. I just wanted to make note because in our work group, when you look at, you have the $60 million cost for the jail itself. What hasn't, I think, not included in that because the way community corrections is funded, it's just the increase in staffing that'll be needed. So that's another tax increase that have to come from the taxpayers because I think community corrections, the way their funding happens from the state, they're kind of like maxed out at that level. So I think we better keep going because. I'm sorry.
I apologize. One last
Hey,
thing.
you all forgive me. Is Marcia still on? I was texting her, and I think Sean was helping me. She is. I don't know if she had a
I have the
comment.
green lights on everywhere.
I think she was trying to make a comment, and I was trying to figure out what she was saying, but thank you, Sean, for helping me.
Yeah, the green light's still on.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Ken, I'm sorry.
Oh, I apologize.
No, you're fine.
One of the last things two last things I want to comment on is that I think everyone, from the commissioners to the council, everyone wants us to start a drug court, right? And one of the things that we want to do with the drug court is part of, we're modeling after other communities is have a mandatory work release component to the drug court. We can't do that now with the current model because it's only for males. So that's an issue. So we really, that's another reason we need it to expand. If we're going to have a successful drug court, we've got to have a better community work release situation. And then secondly, as it relates to, and I probably also misspoke, there will be an impact on level 5s and higher is that work release will be used as a sanction when people violate community corrections or probation. So one of the things, let's say you're out on probation on a level 4 felony, level 5 felony burglary of a business, and somehow, like say you relapse, and you test positive. So the options the judge have is to do nothing, or to put them on home detention, or to send them back to prison. One of the things, have the ability to put a person in work release, and then step them down off of work release, back to work release, home detention, and then regular probation is one of those things that we need the ability to do, which other communities have that ability to do. So that's another place I misspoke, where having that ability in the sanctions part is we feel is a necessity.
And I forgot to mention that earlier, we talked about this being a step down or a step up, having everyone in one building, basically going from, booking, pretrial, sentencing, work release, home detention, probation, and being able to move either way a lot smoothly. Okay.
I just want to add one comment, and it's kind of an answer to a question that was asked. If we didn't build community corrections, would we build more jail cells or vice versa? And the answer to that question certainly is, if we did not include this community corrections wing in the jail, we would certainly be asking for a larger secured facility. We would have no choice but to do that based on the studies that were given to us in 2014 and 2019.
I would like to move on from this topic. Okay, the morgue is next, and this might be a longer topic as well. We cannot spend as long on this one as we did jail cells. It is 7:05. Okay, the finding and recommendation was that an expanded morgue is needed, but there needed to be additional investigation. It's my understanding right now that the morgue, the coroner's office and the morgue is basically working out of 3 different offices. So I'd like to start with the scoping committee to clarify and give us more information on this. Oh, hello.
Hi, good evening, Justin Sparks, Boone County Coroner.
I'm Mr. Sparks.
Would you like me to answer your question, Counselor?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
so we are operating out of one facility, which is ours, which is an office which I occupy along with my chief deputy and my other investigators. We have another office that we use for storage. The morgue that we are permitted to utilize is located at Witham Hospital. It's a 2-bed morgue. We overflow our capacity frequently. As of today, we overflowed it on Thursday. I was free for 48 hours. So I have 2 spaces that I can utilize there. So when we run out of space there, we have a Indiana Department of Health mass fatality trailer that was not designed to be utilized as a routine utilization. We utilize that, and like I said, we're utilizing it right now. And then the Sheriff's Department, we're fortunate enough to be able to store our evidence there. That's very important. Right now I have some very important evidence that I don't have the ability to store in my office. And the Sheriff's Department has been kind enough to permit us to use that. So I work across 3 different spaces, that's correct.
Is it true that if you come to the council and you say, this is what I need, we were required by statute to basically provide you with
I
that?
have read that in the statute, Council.
You have?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
What-
Is it your, I guess, if the morgue is not moved at the jail, is it your intent to come to us and tell us that you don't have enough space and we need to
Yes,
give you more?
I have done that, and I will do that again in a
Okay.
formalized presentation.
There's a question about Witham's ability to provide this extra space, like logistically, is that even feasible?
So Councilor Williams has indicated that Witham Hospital is interested in expanding their morgue. And I think it's very important for everyone to understand that Witham Hospital in and of itself utilizes the morgue for people who pass away in the hospital routinely. And so it's 2 spaces that we utilize. It's 2 spaces that we share with Witham Hospital. I recently, in the last month, had to get up at like 1 o'clock in the morning because Witham, over the course of their day, had 3 people pass away. They were out of the room. They had to do that. So I had to come in. None of those cases were mine. And facilitate moving of people in there.
I don't know if you can comment on this or the sheriff, but how does that impact chain of custody? Like if there's a criminal case, how is this impacting chain of custody with that evidence?
If everything goes perfectly, it's fine. If it doesn't go perfectly, and since I've been in office, we've had an instance where it did not go.
How many incidents?
I've had 1 violation of custody type issue. So right now, I have a key that goes to that cooler. The hospital staff has a key to go to that cooler. It's kept secure in a Pyxis, so they would have to sign it out to get it out. I'm not 100% sure how many keys are out there. Those are the 2 that I know about. So in a case that has potential criminal ramifications, and oftentimes in our cases we do a lot, I'm doing one now that is a rule out homicide, right? We don't believe so, but my job is to get it right every single time. And I have exactly 1 chance to get it right. If I don't get it right, then my evidence is destroyed, which hampers our investigators, our law enforcement partners, and hampers the prosecutor's office, and most importantly, it does not protect the justice of victims of crimes that occur in our community. So what I can do is I can go in and I can literally put a piece of red evidence tape. If you've never handled evidence tape, it's designed, if it gets tampered with, it breaks. So essentially what I can do is go and I can lock it with the key that I have, knowing there's other keys, and I can put evidence tape up there. And that has been breached once on a rule-out homicide case.
Prosecutor Eastwood, fair to say one case is one too many to have an evidence issue on. Do you think, I know you were on the commission. The
Yes.
recommendation was additional investigation into options that include a partnership with them should be explored before a final decision is made. Is it your opinion that it's not feasible to do a partnership with them?
I don't know what that would look like, right? My responsibility is to treat every person who's in our community, every person who passes through our community. If they pass away, I have to treat them with dignity. I have to look families in the face and tell them I'm going to treat them, their loved ones, like they're my family member. I have to put people in an outside portable trailer when I do that, and I don't feel like I'm meeting my obligation when I do that. Counselor?
So have you had any conversations with them about keys?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a conversation today about keys.
Okay, because here's what I'm hearing. This is just my personal opinion. There was one incident, which is one too many, about a chain of custody. I think that's been paraded and flagged around a lot to say, hey, this is why we need a new more. This is just my personal opinion and feedback. With that, Witham has been a great community partner. For those who don't know, Witham is the county designated hospital. So they get special tax status and things of that nature. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank their CEO for being with us here tonight. Thank you so much. And when we started this process, we were talking to the former president and CEO of Witham, Dr. Ray Ingham. The reason I bring all of this up is, do we pay to transport people? Do we pay a company to transport bodies now?
We do, sir, yes.
How much does that cost?
So actually, I had a discussion today. It's $175 for transport. That person, the owner of that company approached me today. Due to fuel prices, I'm going to have to increase that.
So that's cost is
going. Yes.
So if someone died, what are the statutes, and help me understand, because I don't know. When someone dies, do you always have to do an autopsy?
No. So there's very specific statutes in the IC code that dictate what our cases are. And can we do this in two parts, Counselor? One, as far as transportation of people, a vast majority of our cases, and I provided that once to council, and my apologies, I should have had that data pulled up today, as to where we're currently at. A vast majority of the cases that we investigate do not occur at the hospital, right? So those are people that pass away in their home, and we go to their house and we do an investigation and make a determination. Those cases are included, so some of the time, actually have the statistics here, 56% of the time last year in our caseload, those cases were included, and that we had to bring it in for additional investigation and/or autopsy. With that, 44% of those cases were excluded after investigation. Of those 44%, a large, even when oftentimes when people are sick, it's very difficult to confront the thought of passing away or dying and losing a loved one. And a lot of times, on the cases that we don't include, those families have not made a decision what their ultimate final arrangements they want for their loved one. In those times, we actually bring those people into our care and custody, and we'll keep them with us until the time that a family can make those arrangements.
Thank you. So going back to it, we pay to have bodies transported,
Yes, sir.
correct? So in the event that someone would pass away at the hospital, there's an autopsy, we would now pay to have them transported to the jail at the new facility?
Yeah, that's correct.
So that's an additional cost that we would have to pay. And the exploration of a potential morgue at Witham, how have your conversations been? Where have they landed? How many?
Sorry, can you speak up, sir? I can't hear you.
The conversations that you've had with Witham about a potential expansion of the morgue, how have those progressed? What have those been like?
Counselor, you're the only person that's talked to me about that.
So you haven't had any
No,
with Witham?
I have not.
Okay, you'd be open to those?
I'm sorry.
You would be open to those?
Yes, I'm open. I need
Okay.
a space, right? It's important. This is a plan that is moving forward. It's very important to me that we work actively at accomplishing this.
Right, and thank you. There's no guarantee that Witham will say, yes, we're expanding our morgue and we want to do this. The point of this, if you look at page 15 of the report, it says additional investigations of the options that include a partnership with Witham should be explored before a final decision is made. And I'm not going to put it on the spot. I think Witham has been having conversations about potentially expanding certain parts of their facility. That's a conversation that I think that's worth having, once again, because that's going to be worthwhile in the taxpayers, in my opinion, in saving them money. Because as it stands right now with this new design, I believe that the coroner's office, is it on top or below the juvenile space? It's below the juvenile space. So are there requirements when you build jails, I know specifically with juveniles, about like, so when we went to the Hendricks County Jail, they were filling up like the brick with a certain type of mortar and stuff for like safe, so people couldn't break out of jail. So is there an increased cost naturally to secure a facility like the jail? When you're doing construction, it's not like you're building a regular brick and mortar building like this municipal building, right? There's a higher cost. Is that safe to say?
For building the coroner space
No,
compared to
for building the jail space.
building a jail compared to an office building, yes.
So, and the coroner's office would be below the juvenile space, correct? So, I say that.
But not built like a jail. I think it's important to understand that. We're building it like an office space.
Right. So overall, the construction cost of adding it to the jail naturally would be probably more than adding it to just a traditional office space. So, thank you.
Yeah, and
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I have a.
So let me go back. Let me clarify. Here's why I think it is. When we went to the Hendricks County Jail, there's an extra cost because there are federal requirements about how you have to build a jail. Like, hey, you don't want people breaking in, you definitely don't want people breaking in. You don't want people breaking out of the jail. So if there's an increased cost, how do we just say, hey, if the juvenile facility is on top of the jail, obviously the floor to the juvenile facility collides with the floor of the ceiling. Yeah, I'm sorry, the ceiling of the morgue. So my point is, we don't have to get into semantics. There's an extra cost, inevitably. What that is, we don't know the specific details. But to say, oh, there's not an extra cost to build it there, that means maybe the facility isn't as secure.
Right, so from a basic perspective, you have to understand how the existing intake center works, right? So you kind of come up an elevated area into the intake center, and so as we build the pre-booking space, we're kind of floating it because the ground is going down like this, okay? And so what we're doing is basically we have a walk-out basement, if you think about your home, from the perspective of where the coroner space is. So we are going to have to build those walls and that structure in order to be able to support the pre-intake space. So what we're able to do, though, is we have a good set of parameters where we're able to get light, natural light into their space and full access along that one face. And so we're taking maximum advantage of, this very challenging site, this pedestal that we have to put on in terms of the pre-intake center to be able to put the coroner underneath. And it's only 300,000 square feet. And so, if it's $300 a square foot, $350 a square foot on a $60 million project, we're talking $1 million.
How much?
$1 million?
I'm just asking, so I didn't hear you. I wouldn't.
$1 million. So like I said, on a $60 million, $59 million project, it's $1 million. We have a lot of the components there. We're just fitting out the interior space.
Yeah, so thank you. I think it would be advantageous for us if you're saying it's $1 million. Hey, what is the cost to expand the space at with them? Like, hey, if it's less than $1 million, then does it make sense to say, all right, $750,000. That's $250,000 in additional taxes that we don't have to put the burden on constituents.
But structurally, if I'm picturing what you're describing correctly, we have to put something under the intake, so.
Yeah, we will anyway.
Okay, so something's gonna have to go there.
It's like, all we're doing is
structurally.
fitting out their insides, right?
Okay. Quick question. Even if Witham says, yes, we'll give you this extra space, there's nothing that's preventing them or stopping them from one day saying, we're taking this space back, you can't have it.
Yeah, so Witham's been a phenomenal partner to work with, right? Like, I think both sides would acknowledge that it's an imperfect situation. And through the management stuff, we work greatly together to accomplish the goal of doing what we both have to do. The challenge with that, right, like it's a shared space. So I have policies and procedures in place for my employees. Witham Hospital has policies and procedures inside for that. Through the emergency department management and we work very well at kind of bridging those, but certainly they're two different things and two different ways of looking at things. And ultimately that would be, we do not have a formal agreement that I'm aware of at this point. It is a courtesy of Witham Hospital to permit us to do those type of things, is my understanding. So if a formal agreement was put in place, then I think you could alleviate those things, but that's not something that exists in this state that I'm aware of.
As our current elected coroner, what do you feel is the best option?
To have an independent space.
Even if that's an increase of the taxpayers?
Counselor,
I'm just asking.
It
Yeah.
sounds like regardless, it might be an increase to us if you're gonna come to us and say, I can't have 3 places, I need 1 place. But we're gonna have to find space for you somewhere.
my personal fear, so inside, and another thing that I'm thankful for with them is that their nursing staff has the ability to go in overnight and to check those, the temperatures and to make sure. We recently had a problem where we had a malfunction, and the nursing staff was able to contact me. My biggest fear when I have folks that are outside, we're relying on an audible alarm on a machine that neither with them or I are trained on, that we have a manual to look at. And what happens if it breaks in the middle of the night, right? So having our own space that we can control and monitor things is the most ideal.
I just want to clarify, I think Councilor Hofstadter asked a great question, I just want to clarify, even at a higher expense, are you still comfortable putting it in an independent space if it's an increased cost to taxpayers?
So I look at...
Because you're the elected official,
Yeah,
so.
correct, right? So I look at, in any situation, we have responsibility to fulfill our duties as elected officials. We have a responsibility to be fiscally minded with the utilization of taxpayer money. Those are 2 vitally important things.
Agreed.
I can tell you that when I meet with families and when I deal with families when they're having their tragic moments, that I think most people would want their loved one treated respectfully and have assurances that everything was going to be okay and have assurances that hopefully they're not the 3rd person and they're not put outside today. I think they probably would be okay with a nominal tax increase for that.
Can I,
You're also, I mean, you're part of law enforcement, so
Correct.
it's not just the family side, you need to be able to work with the
Yes.
sheriff's office. Okay.
just a couple of comments on this particular conversation, and I don't think I've had a conversation with the current administrator at the hospital on this particular topic. I think we've talked about other things. But I did have this conversation with the former, and we've had input from others. I sat in on the subcommittee with Justin on the subcommittee meeting, the last one, regarding the morgue, and the consensus at that time, I believe, was that this is what should happen, was that it should be at the jail. And that was what was conveyed to me. That was the understanding I had when I left there. Why that changed, I don't know. But this particular situation, the question that Mr. Williams is asking is a pretty unfair question, because if you take this same situation and you apply it to any other office, you're going to have the same answer. If I have to build an office out here on a separate piece of land, that cost is going to be higher. And what we're doing is we're utilizing a space underneath a space that's already in a building that's being built. If we had to take this 3,000 square feet, acquire land, do site prep, get all the permitting, you're talking about a significantly higher cost for the same square footage. So the answer to the question is, this is the best financial scenario for the taxpayer.
So Mr. Wolf thinks that my question is unfair. Let me go back to why I'm asking the question, because Councilor Hofstadter asked a very fair question, and she said, is it safe to assume you need an independent space? My question was, do you need an independent space that if you had to pick from 2, you would pick one that was a higher cost? Like, would you pick one that was a higher cost to the taxpayers? And you eloquently stated, yes, if need be, because you feel like families should have the ability to care for their loved ones, which is what you're doing now, and not that space.
An absolutely hypothetical question that shouldn't even be
Hold on, I'm
asked.
going to interrupt both of you.
Hold on. Let me finish my statement.
Please,
Can I
just 1 second, Aaron, and I will let you come back to it. I don't want to do this. We are not doing this today. You did clarify my question.
Was I wrong, though? I just want to make sure I didn't get it wrong.
No.
Okay.
I think what Jeff was saying is the question I asked that then you clarified was not as black and white, and he was trying to further detail that question. And so I don't, that is how I view it, so,
Can I just fit?
yes, thank you.
So, thank you.
May I ask you a question?
Can I finish my statement? What I was saying?
Sorry, I did say I would let him finish.
So that's why I was asking that question, and I want to bring us back to our point of our discussion that Councilor Hofstadter has done a great job navigating us through, is the need. We're talking about the need. So my question is based on it. I'm sorry?
I said, you don't see it.
Hold on, can we,
No comments,
please?
please.
Yeah, no
Yes,
comment, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I know everyone is very passionate about this project, and I'm sure everyone has a lot to say, and I'm trying to get through this so I can open it up for public comment.
Yeah. So back to it, the discussion is based on the need, so that's what we're trying to define. So
Yeah.
I think,
Thank you. Coroner Sparks, if, you've been coroner for how long now?
This is my second year, sir, as deputy coroner for several years before that.
And you're doing a really good job. Very professional agency, and you're working out of 3 different offices. Can I ask you, does it benefit the coroner's office to be, not at the jail, but at that Justice Center compound? I think we got to compare that. That's a Justice Center, it's not the jail. There's a lot of different multi-facets that come into this. But would it benefit you to be there close to our investigators, close to our evidence room, being able to share the technology, all those things, where you would not have if you build it in another location?
Yeah, so my office is, I'm a part-time, quote-unquote part-time employee. I have a chief deputy who's part-time, and we have per diem investigators, which are people that have full-time jobs and work for us on their availability of time. Our office, I understand there's a lot of conception that we just go out and say, yes, someone has passed away. That's actually not true at all. We do very robust investigations because we have to get it right the first time. I look at my partnerships with all of our agencies and our law enforcement agencies. Those are force multipliers to me. How do I take what I have been given? How do I use what exists around me? And how do I use that all together working for one thing, and that is to get the truth and to provide families answer and to do so in a way that will pass the test of the judicial system.
I asked a bad question.
no, you didn't. No,
Well, I did, and so I just want to summarize kind of what I heard. I asked you, what is the best option? And people heard different questions there. I was asking, what is the best option from like a procedure, like being able to do your job. The other part of that question is, what is the best option financially? What I'm hearing is procedurally, best option is for it to be at the jail.
Yes.
And financially, you also think that that is the best option.
Yes, Counselor,
Okay.
that's my.
Thank you. And I apologize, that was not a good
problem.
question.
will we at least,
Sorry if I misunderstood your
No,
question.
it was,
I thought you were talking procedurally.
but just to clarify before we move on, we're at least open to having the conversation with them to see financially if that's a more suitable situation?
It's timelines, right? Like, I'm open to listen to anybody, right? This is a plan that is in motion and going forth. It's what I can get to the end to be doing my job the way that it needs to be done, as efficiently, economically, and as quickly as possible.
have those conversations happened with Witham?
Sorry, I'm Kelly Broderman. Nice to meet everybody. Not nice to meet you. Well, not in this capacity. While I do not have the type of data that tells you how expensive it is to build a healthcare facility, I have built a few in my life, and they are not.
Oh, we
Can you
can't.
speak up? They're saying they can't hear you.
Even closer.
Sorry.
Okay. Healthcare facilities are very expensive. So while Witham is definitely willing to go down this path and learn and partner, we'll do whatever it takes. But the current facility in its current format and how we're using it, I am not pleased.
Okay.
It is
Fair.
not okay for our patients. It's not okay for my team. And I have questions about the chain of custody daily. And it was one of the first questions I had when I came here. The room is small, to say best.
Yes.
We had 4 people in there, and you would have not been able to move around well. And then the body coolers that everyone is calling a morgue, they are body coolers. It is not a morgue. Very different from what an actual morgue needs to be and what this community deserves.
I really appreciate that. That's very
Thank you.
useful information.
Thank you.
And I can't reiterate enough the CEO's team that she has working with them. Like I said, we work incredibly well as a team. We did so today to overcome an obstacle with keys in the outside cooler. We came up with a solution and we did so. So much credit to Witham for being a great community partner, as you said. But we both agree that if you go back to Witham's history, when they built a new facility, they did not have a morgue at any time. And our community is growing, and we're doing the best we can, but we are operating under Band-Aids and handshake agreements to try and accomplish a goal.
And as we move on, just so you know, section 15 of the report does say that the morgue space is needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Witham does not have any space to.
Oh, no, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Juveniles. So, let's see. believe the recommendation was that Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, that the juvenile space was not needed and there needed to be additional investigation.
Correct.
I think I'm reading that correctly. Okay. Prosecutor Eastwood, are you able to comment on the change in the law with juveniles?
May I make a comment before that?
Yes.
Please. There's a misconception that this is a juvenile holding facility, and I'm not sure where that misconception came from. This is not. This is 6 beds for a temporarily juvenile segregation unit. So we can use it for juveniles, we can use it for adults, we can't use it for the same at the same time, but it's 6 beds that we can use for segregation, juveniles, any type of thing that we feel we need to segregate somebody for. So let's make sure that we all understand that this isn't a juvenile holding facility. It's a short-term facility that we can hold juveniles if we have to, because of the new law out of the state, out of the sight and sound of all of the adult inmates that we can put in there for a 48 to 72 hour period. And that is what we've talked about all along. So I want to get past the fact that this is a juvenile facility, because it is not.
Right, so this is short term, this is when they're coming back and
Yes,
forth for
ma'am.
hearings, this is not, they've been sentenced and they're gonna serve.
Yes, ma'am. If a law enforcement officer from any agency arrests a juvenile, we can't get them placed. We can house them there, have them 24-hour with a corrections officer, and we can keep them there until we find a permanent facility. So this is not a juvenile holding facility.
And I should know the answer to this. The change is, even if they're a juvenile, they're charged as an adult. We can't put them with the adult population, and that's the change, because
correct.
we used to be able to, right?
Based upon their age.
Okay.
Not what they're charged with.
Just to the sheriff's comment, in the report, in the information that we got from you all, it says that the new intake and juvenile facility, I'm sorry, let me go back to it. I'm on page 18 for the proposed change. It says the new intake and juvenile facility would add 6 beds specifically designed for juvenile offenders in order to comply with new, quote, sight or sound law requirements. Proposed addition of attorney-client meeting room, school service areas, and juvenile-specific special beds.
That's correct. But it's not just for that. It can be used for segregation for adults when we don't have juveniles in there. And I think that's a misconception.
But if a juvenile comes in while an adult is there, you have to move that adult out, correct?
That's correct.
So this facility, as it was proposed, sounds like it's not a holding facility until they go somewhere. If you're going to be, you're not going to hold a juvenile for school services, right?
No, but I think the confusion maybe is like if we're holding them pre-adjudication, basically. Like
How long was the hold room for that?
Well, it's just gonna.
So before I answer that question, Councilman, I just want to clarify, make sure I understand it correctly too. So this is not only going to be a juvenile holding facility for those juveniles who are charged as adults, but also a temporary holding facility for juveniles instead of taking them to Delaware County.
Yes.
Correct?
That's correct.
YOC,
That is correct.
So we have to look at this, in my opinion, in 2 segments. One, you have juveniles charged as juveniles. Another one, you have juveniles charged as adults. Those are 2 separate things. Juveniles charged as juveniles, right now, we spend we're slated to spend, I think, $100,000 this year in paying Delaware County to house our juvenile.
How much?
$100,000.
Okay.
Prior to that, prior to the pandemic, it was at $100,000. During the pandemic, it went down because it just weren't housing as many people. That's just what was happening. So right now, we're scheduled to spend $100,000 just to pay Delaware County to take our juvenile offenders charged as juveniles. That's it. All right? So, and those juvenile offenders are not there long-term. These are juveniles who was arrested, who is not with...
You mean the ones going to Delaware County?
Yes.
Okay.
These are juveniles who get caught doing the crime.
Uh-huh.
They're initially, quote-unquote, arrested or detained. And then we come back, usually within 48 hours, and have a detention hearing. Sometimes they go back to Delaware County. Other times we put them on work release, not work release, I'm sorry, home detention, and other methods. But right now, we transfer them back and forth all the time. So that's one thing you have to look at, is that cost right there, $100,000 a year. The second cost that you have to look at is juveniles charged as adults. To date, we have been lucky.
Do it again. Save some money.
We've been really lucky. We've had 3 juveniles we sought to charge as adults. One, the judge would not let us do it. So they're actually, I think, at Delaware County. Another one we charged as an adult. We were lucky in that he was 2 weeks away from his 18th birthday, and he's still being held in our jail. We had to send him to Vigo County. We paid Vigo County $225 to $250 a day, I think.
Yes.
No one else would take him. We asked Marion County to take him. He was a Marion County juvenile with an extensive history in Marion County. Marion County said, no go, we're not taking that juvenile.
Don't worry, they'll let him
No one else
out.
would take him. We had to send him to Vigo County. We had to transfer him back and forth for his hearings. We have another person charged with a juvenile charge as an adult robber that is being held in Marion County, luckily, because he also has an adult case in Marion County. Had he not had that adult case in Marion County, we'd be footing the bill for that person. Typically, we have adults charged, we have juveniles charged as adults, I would say 1 to 2 times a year, where they should be held. It's usually armed robbery cases. But those are the 2 things you're talking about. Those are 2 separate things. So as it relates to the new law, when those juveniles are charged as adults, we used to be allowed to have them in the general pop or at the jail. And I think a lot of times the jail didn't put them in gen pop, they put them in like a segregated facility at the jail.
Correct.
They no longer can be anywhere in the adult population area. They have to have sight and sound barriers. So they have to be in their own individual location. So if it is our intent, so we have 2 options with juveniles charged as adults. 1, provide this, or 2, pay someone else to do it. Our experience so far in getting someone else to do it is, it's hard to find someone, and I'll tell you, in the middle of the night, trying to find a jail to do this is virtually impossible, and it's something law enforcement should not be we should not be working on, because what it really comes down to a lot of times is, no offense, the detectives in the jail are working on this, when the detectives should be worried about the case.
Does community corrections or someone else help with that?
No.
Okay.
No,
So,
yeah.
so how much is the new juvenile facility? What's the proposed cost of?
The holding facility.
Yeah, it's not a juvenile facility.
Those have very different meanings. and
I'm just going back off of what was presented to us. If you tell me that we need to have attorney-client meeting rooms, school service areas, you're holding it's a facility to hold, but neither here nor there. What's the cost for the juvenile facility portion?
The breakdown was provided to us by Hagerman Group. Lists the coroner's office pre-booking, main intake, adaptive reuse, a total of 19,000 square feet, which includes the area inside the current jail that's being readapted for intake. Yeah, so that total cost is $9.3 million.
For the juvenile space?
No.
I just have
Just listen to me for a minute. So the new structure where the morgue and the juvenile space will be housed is estimated at $3.5 to $4 million.
The specific space where those cells are, the day space, the security vestibule, and the 1 interview room is approximately 1,000 square feet. If you go at $500 a foot, $500,000.
For this area right here that I'm circling right now. That's the area that's dedicated to that.
So Jeff, what are we talking about with $3.5 million?
That's the entire structure with the morgue and that building above it.
And
So
the pre-intake,
500
and the Sally Port, and the site work that goes around it.
Yeah.
So $500,000 for the juvenile space.
Well, you asked what the cost of just that
Right,
area
so I
was,
just
and
want to make
that's what they're
sure.
telling
So
me.
$500,000 for the juvenile space, $1 million for the corner space, I think is what you said, and then $1.5 million for the space below.
For the pre-intake, the Sally Port, and all the site work that goes around it in order to make it happen.
Okay.
YOC doesn't always have availability, right?
Sorry.
YOC doesn't always have availability.
No, yeah, and that's only post adjudication anyway, so.
Okay.
Yeah, this facility at the jail for juveniles is not post adjudication. It's
Right.
pre-adjudication, holding them, juveniles charged with juveniles, and it's truly is temporary. And then the thing that we do need, have to have the ability to have, either we pay another county to do it, which I've seen cost anywhere from $175 to do it to $300 a day, is finding another facility to take somebody with juvenile charge as an adult. And there's no guarantee places will take them. You know, like the ones that we've tried, it's been difficult to find places. So the only thing like I said, I think, if I'm not correct, I wish Juvenile Probation was here, but I think it's like $90,000 to $100,000 that they plan that it's in their budget for this year. I know we went down during COVID, then it went back up last year.
And that 100,000, that doesn't include the transportation costs of the deputies driving back and forth.
You want to go to the next section?
Is that good? Okay. Sorry, real quick, there's a question about schooling. We need to provide the schooling service while they're pre-adjudication.
It has to be available to have something. So yeah, so if a child's held there for 2 or 3 weeks, you want to have the ability to provide that service.
Okay.
So that's why they have that there. If it's, yeah.
And the attorney juvenile meeting room, that is, I mean, that, again, if we have a juvenile charged as an adult, we can't be bringing them over to where the other meeting rooms are. We have to have a separate meeting room for them there.
Right now, the attorneys meet with, if a juvenile's held, they don't even have the ability to meet with their clients.
Okay.
They have to meet with them in the courthouse, out in the vestibule, out in the rotunda, or if the court has the jury room available.
And I believe you said this earlier, but our juvenile case filings have increased.
Well, right now, if you look at the first 5 months, we saw an increase up into the pandemic, and it's leveled off. So we had a 25% increase prior to the pandemic, and we didn't see a downtick in that. It's leveled off. However, if we look at the first 5 months of this year, if we maintain those numbers, we're going to spike back up a little bit. It'll be the highest year of cases ever if we maintain the numbers through the first 5 months.
Okay, and it is 7:41. Prosecutor's office, that's next on the agenda. The prosecutor's office was never going to go out into that building, so I'm hoping we could just skip that agenda item. There was never.
I don't think they were going to go out. I think the plan was, according to conversations we had, was that if we move community corrections and probation out of their current space, then the prosecutor's office would have the ability to move to the Key Bank building.
Correct.
Was that part of the concession?
That was my understanding now.
So that means that if you don't move them, then that's additional space that we wouldn't necessarily have to have a tax increase to pay for, but we can come back to it.
But then you're out of space, right?
Yeah, we have no more spaces. We just renovated a storage closet to an office for somebody.
And it's my understanding that community corrections and probation, they're out of office space as well. Oh, okay. I thought I saw Michael.
That's what's been shared with
Michael came in, didn't he? Yes. Yeah, I saw you.
The one in the middle.
Yeah, we're out of space.
Okay.
You have room for any additional space?
Good answer.
No, we literally turned a drug screening room into an office this week, so we're now collecting drug screens in a hallway. We're breaking confidentiality. We're having a new person that's going to start within the next 6 months. We have no idea where that person's going to go, and they're going to be asking for at least one more, and I really need one more right now. We don't have office for any of those.
And where are you at? Where are your offices at, so people who don't?
The adults are all on the second floor of the Key Bank building. Probation Community Corrections shares the second floor on the adults, and then juvenile probation is housed on the fourth floor. When JDAI started a few years ago, there was a push for them, sort of in line with the Sight and Sound, to not be in the same lobby with our adult offenders, so that's why they have the fourth floor. And there is an open office up there, but that's not a practical answer for any adult officer because we can't have an adult on that floor.
Yeah.
So you're out of space, you're out of space. Whether or not community corrections or probation goes out there, we have to find space.
At Ken's point, we have a
Yeah.
closet that we divided in half and made 2 offices, and we had what was a big conference area that we built 4 offices in to accommodate the space that we have, but we literally can't build any more offices in our current space. And like I said, we're now taking drug screens, the paperwork and everything in the hallway, which we shouldn't be doing.
Thank you. I'd like to propose something, a change to the agenda. I feel like we've kind of touched on some of the operating costs as we've gone on in their appropriate categories. I'd really like to open it up for public comment. If there are more questions about operating costs, can we address that Tuesday at our council meeting since this project is on our agenda?
We can, so whoever wants to come up to speak, go ahead. I just want to point out that on page 15 of the commission report, when it talks about the prosecutor's office in the space, it says to maintain the current office footprint and explore available office space near the courthouse And also, which I think is key, is to investigate the ability to terminate private business leases that is currently owned in the Key Bank building. So the county currently owns the Key Bank building, and we have private folks that are in there. But an option could be to terminate those leases and at no additional cost to us because we own the space, potentially move folks there, so.
I would, a few things real quick on that, and Jeff, I'm going to ask you to comment on this at our meeting on Tuesday, but my understanding is we're still paying the
bond.
The bond, thank you, and the Key Bank is.
31.
So if we kick them out, then we're going to have to come up with that money.
Yeah, the
Okay.
rents pay the.
How much
debt
revenue is
service
it?
on the bond.
How much revenue are we bringing in from it?
I couldn't answer that off the top of my head.
Could you find out and let us know?
I've got a breakdown of it.
Just generally summarize, it sounds like there's going to be a cost, regardless if we kick someone out of the Key Bank building or have to find new space for prosecutors or probation community corrections, there's going to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the point, though, is like, if it costs to kick people out, that is still cheaper than building a new space and increasing taxes, like, we should at least investigate it, which I think is what it
The number of private
says.
offices in that building is very, very limited.
And can I ask you guys to touch on, like, actually the feasibility of using the Key Bank space to either put prosecutor's office there or extend community corrections and probation? Because I've been in there, it doesn't seem like it's enough space to turn it into what either of those departments are going to need.
Well, the building itself has been renovated mechanically, and so after we purchased the building, I think it was 3 years later, we did a major renovation on the mechanical systems, the roof, the envelope, the windows. The elevators were updated, help me, Max, the heating and air. Was there anything else that I'm missing?
No, other than renovations that were done to accommodate the offices that we have now.
Yeah, and so the mechanicals are up to date, but we have, if we were to move the prosecutor's office over there, he is going to need some renovation just to make the space more usable for him. It is set up as an office building, so it does have a lot of potential for that, but it also would need some renovation. Cost, we don't know until we know what the renovation would need to be.
Thank you. I feel like this has really been good conversation tonight. I really appreciate the clarification and the additional information that's been provided to clarify portions of the commission report. I really hope the council feels like we can move forward on Tuesday and have good discussions there and make a decision as to what we're going to do. I will open it up for public comment now. I know when I read Don's opening statement, I believe he was hoping we could stay here for 2 hours. I realize we went way over on some of these topics. So it is 7:47. We can go a little past 8, but I will ask people to be mindful of the time. So especially because we were borrowing Lebanon's facilities right now. So.
Well, I'll get started then.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time. Josh Garrett, Zionsville Town Council. Tonight was helpful. I think we all remember that we went through a process like this in 2016, where we raised the public safety lit by 50%. That was the right decision. And when it was passed, you know, the press release said the county could set aside funding each year for the construction of a juvenile detention facility and/or new jail in the next 8 years. Commissioner Wolf mentioned that a 2014 study said a jail increase was needed. So we must have known there was a problem. You know, clearly we didn't save for it, so we're coming back to the well again and asking the community for more money. I have no doubt that there is a want. There's a want for jails, admin space, more community corrections with juveniles, prosecutor's office. I think what we need to figure out is how do you balance those wants with those needs and pay for it with the appropriate funding. I think about Zionsville, even after that lit increase, we still need more police, we still need more fire, but we have to live within our means. So I have a few concerns I just wanted to share with the councilors and with the commissioners. I think the number one thing is I don't think the public is really aware of this. If I think about the process that we went through for the first lit, it was very detailed and it came to all 6 county and city councils. So it came to Advance, Jamestown, Lebanon, Whitestown, Thorntown, Zionsville. That was helpful for me. It helped me to understand and articulate to my constituents why this was needed and could defend it. I don't know that this has really had that same rigor, even though we are asking for additional funding. This is also happening at a time where I'm starting to get a lot of questions and concerns from constituents who are seeing huge increases in their own personal property tax assessments. That's great news because Boone County is doing well, property values are going up, but it also means that those taxes are going up. So we need to be mindful. I hear phrases like when tax increases are proposed, it's only going to cost X dollars per month per person. Those start adding up, and we have to start understanding the impact on those individuals' budgets. And compounding further with inflation, it's just something I think we need to take care of, which sort of leads into the third point I have, which is I am just concerned that if we go through this full force, does this limit our ability to address other concerns that we may have from a public safety standpoint in the future? Inflation impacts on our own budgets, our municipal budgets, whether county or town level, is something we're going to have to consider here in the future. But also the operational costs that are going to go up, specifically thinking too about the schools. That's something that's been top of mind for me recently, especially with the news. We have a great partnership with Boone County and Lebanon in the Zionsville School District in keeping those schools safe. If we need to adjust tactics or adjust staffing to continue to keep those safe, if we've spent these increases on jails, are we then limiting the opportunities to prevent there in the future? Fourth is competitiveness. There are a lot of great things going on in Boone County. Whitestown, fastest growing town in the state. Lebanon, with all the recent success with the Lilly announcement. Zionsville, all the increase in the AV that's going on there. I just want to make sure we are balancing a tax burden with safety, not only for residents, but also for the jail staff as well. I've met with so many new residents to Zionsville, to our community, that have escaped high tax other localities. I just want to make sure we aren't going in a slippery slope of turning Boone County into its own high-tax locality, but also, again, balancing that with public safety. So I realized tonight was just a review of the report. I was kind of hoping to understand what were some of our other options, and maybe that's for another time. What I've heard tonight is only one option, was a jail expansion. I am appreciative, I think, of Councilor Williams' questions here about sort of understanding the best ROI for taxpayer dollars. I think for the dollar amounts we're discussing, I just think the public should be better informed of those options if those taxes are going up. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Hi, my name is Jeff Wishek. I'm on the Whitestown Town Council. I just wanted to share with you something, my feelings on this. I just want to state my position as a member of the council for Whitestown, and it reflects the opinion of many of the constituents I spoke with as well. Their feelings on the funding and the construction of the new facility. We can debate for hours whether the facility is needed or not, but I'd like to focus more on what feels like a lack of data on my side on alternatives, right? And fiscal responsibility to the county residents at this time. If the new jail can be constructed and funded without raising taxes to the residents of the county, it'd be much more palatable, less of a debate, I feel like. But to my knowledge, the data to drive the need for this is a little lacking. And the council's committee findings, I know you guys touched on it, but it did show a reduction in need, so I know you talked on that tonight. So I'm looking for, where's the study on the cost analysis to compare how much it would cost to outsource inmates versus housing them in a new facility? What's the cost per inmate per day in our new facility? What are we giving up in order to fund this, right? What opportunities are we missing out, or what can we potentially miss out on? Forgive me, I'm not, so let's see. So to make any financial decision, we should know what the cost to solve the problem is in every way possible, and then we have the data to know which solution is best. Have all these alternatives been considered? All we're being presented is this one option. And then have multiple options, So I just feel like this should be driven more on facts. It feels like it's a little bit on emotion here. There's been a little bit of emotion going on. Changing the subject a little bit, property taxes across our county, or across the country, are skyrocketing, and Boone County is no exception. Rampant inflation is hitting all our residents hard, just like it's affecting the entire country. We already voted to support lit. We're already paying, and our residents are already paying their share as well. The previous lit was approved at 0.5%. even though when we approved it, it was only requested to be 0.25% would have been enough, and then we approved more than that. I was told 0.35% would have been good, and we approved 0.5%. So we already went above what was requested back then already. I believe the lit income has far surpassed every projection as well. So, and it will continue to beat those projections. I cannot in good conscience look at my constituents and support any additional taxes when they're already being hit so hard. The county's bringing in more money than it ever has, in my opinion, due to all the property tax increases, all the additional assessed value, income tax growth, and I don't believe there's a need for additional taxes to fund this. We got to find a different way. In short, it needs to be, should not be made without multiple options being weighed with great deliberation. It seems that the data has not been adequately collected and assessed. To be able to make an informed decision, we can't in good conscience ask the residents of this county to pay one more cent given the current economic situation without knowing for certain that this is the only solution. We gotta get everything out of it and know this is what we need for this county. And once we know that, that's where we gotta go. So it's our job as counselors to ensure the funds entrusted to us are used in the best way. You simply can't do that without having all the information. So any additional taxes to the residents should not be up for consideration as a means for paying for this, in my opinion. And I do appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, Marcia can't get on or she wouldn't speak.
Yeah,
Can we,
you have to, you all have to forgive us. Marsha Wilhoit is going through some recovery right now. So when she speaks, she may be a little faint in her voice. You'll have to put the Sorry. I've been texting, me and Sean, I think I've been texting with her, so just bear with her, please, as she tries to speak. Marsh, if you can hear us, we're ready for you.
You able to hear us, man?
I've heard her faint.
Volume's all the way up.
Sean, I just texted her again. I've been trying to get her on since we started. Let's go ahead and until she comes back.
Thank you. My name's Glenn Beasy, a taxpaying resident of Boone County and a county employee as well. On page 6 of the report, it states that the commission was created by the council, and I'm just curious as to who chose the members of the commission and why that information wasn't published, because it just seems like it was talked about that a commission needed to be formed, and then boom, here's a commission. And I noticed in the listing of the folks in the Justice Commission that it's noticeably absent of any current working staff or administrative member of the Sheriff's Department, and I'm curious as to why that is. I would think that if you were going to do something like this and have this major of a discussion, that you would have someone in there that is a working part of the machine, but it's absent in that. Page 8 states that the commission witnessed this facility firsthand, and I'd like to know which members specifically visited the jail, what dates and times that they were there, what was the total cumulative hours spent on site, and why was this information not made known to the public? You guys touched on staffing a little bit, and the corrections, as you know, if you don't know, has been down a number of folks. And to add onto them the responsibility of transporting folks back and forth from Vigo County or anywhere else, it creates a bigger burden on an already overworked system. And as far as the maintenance of this building goes, currently there's one maintenance tech and one custodial staff for an 80,000 square foot building. And we have 6 acres of grass we have to mow in the summertime, and we've got snow removal in the wintertime. So the staff shortage, if it's not known, I'm making it known now, and it's been this way since 2010 out at the jail. The Commissioners, the commission report, to me, indicates taking reactionary approaches versus proactive approaches. And how can this be squared with the county population trends and the crime that will surely accompany this growth? We talk about the coroner. This is a county-elected coroner office. And his need for space and duty and chain of custody was touched on in the investigations of it. And this has largely been left to a private entity to provide, dictate, and manage. The loved ones of Boone County citizens are being stored in a refrigerated trailer in the parking lot of Witham Hospital because there is no space. The commission wishes to continue to investigate partnering with Witham instead of treating the coroner like other county offices. Page 16, the commission found that mental health space was needed, but the proposed space was not justified. It's beyond my comprehension that the rash of violent crimes in recent years that they could come to this conclusion. Instead, they propose the use of flex space, which is already in practice and stretched way too thin. So in other words, there's no change there. Page 17, the programs existing for current inmates have been deemed adequate, therefore no change here either. Greater needs instead are deferred to more research, and this constitutes yet another reactionary approach. And this closes the door on the immediate help that's needed by inmates. Page 18, the juvenile center, or the juvenile area. Once again, the commission wishes to shift this responsibility to other forward-thinking counties at a greater cost of Boone County taxpayers and the families of those juveniles. So in my summary of this commission report as I see it, they recommend no action without further investigation, which is what the council charged this commission to do. This will only cost Boone County taxpayers millions more in money. Jail inmates are at a loss of needed programs to change their lives, and county employees are made to work in overcrowded and outdated facilities. Due to this report and the inability of the fiduciaries to read the economy and personal issues of some of its members overshadowing their sworn duties to this county, I'm left with little confidence that it can right itself as a body and do what's needed for this county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tony Teal. I live in Zionsville and Willow Glen. Just for full disclosure, I'm also a candidate for Boone County Council, District 4. So I had a few comments I wanted to share as a candidate that have been talking to voters. Most of the voters are concerned either about the potholes in the roads or the jail. And the jail becomes the number one discussion point, the thing that people are most want to talk about. But the first question they ask is, do we need it? After that, I usually, getting into the weeds, the voters don't care. If we need it, let's do it. Now, I'm running for District 4, so my perspective might be reflective of that area of the county. District 1 represents Zionsville, District 4 is Whitestown and the northern neighborhoods of Zionsville. So there is two parts to the county, but I don't see as many people concerned about the cost as they are, do we need it? Well, because one of the reasons why people move here to our community is for good schools, safe communities, and good infrastructure. And this fits into that plan. I do want to thank all the stakeholders here from the county commissioners, Boone County Sheriff's Department, council, everybody that's been a part of this project. Has been a multi-year project. A lot of time, work, and effort has been put into it. But if I would make a suggestion on how this process of investigation went along, I would break it down into two phases. There's the requirements phase, make sure that the council and the commissioners are in agreement on what the requirements are. Because in architecture, form follows function. So if you can agree with what we need to do, then you know what the building has to look like. And then you can have a second investigation to make sure that you've you've met that requirements. Because as I understand the report, you list out the statutes as to why you're doing this. It's to make sure, it's an investigation as a legislative body, you're doing this to make sure that laws are followed, processes followed, and that there's no deficiencies in the report. And so doing this at the end, you've got too much to investigate all at the same time. I would have broken it down into two parts. In terms of if I have one suggestion about communication for the commissioners, I would do a deep dive walkthrough to each part of this diagram, the architectural diagram. We just have the colored picture that's usually what's shared, but it's very hard to see each of the different parts, and then you can delve into why each of those parts on the diagram, on the architectural plan, are needed. I would also urge the county council to actually take a vote on this at the next meeting and for the lit tax. And the reason why I say that is Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve is meeting next week, and interest rates will increase 0.5 to 3/4 of a point. And if you delay past that, then the next Fed Reserve meeting, rates will go up another 0.5%. And so costs are escalating to the taxpayers just as we wait. So as you wait to decide if you're going to save a couple nickels and dimes and take this room off or that room off, you have to pay the architects to change the plan. You'll have to take some time to look at it and to get that approved. And by then, interest rates have escalated 1.5. So the discount rates on the bonds you're going to issue are going to go up even more, and that will cost millions more. So I would urge action now and take the vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just, real quick, I know there are 3 comments. We've been rumbling back and forth. We're just trying to ensure that
Yes.
Marcia Wilhoit's on the
Thank
phone.
you.
I don't want anyone to think we weren't listening. We're just trying to ensure Marcia is on the phone. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, because I was going to say it.
Are there any other comments? Okay. With that, okay.
Just acknowledge that Don is here too. That Don came in.
Elise.
She opened up.
This
Don came.
Would you like
Sorry,
to wait?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm Diana Freeman. I've made the same request at several of the commission meetings, and prior to that, and it'll be short and sweet. Please don't raise our taxes. You all can see what's going on outside these rooms. You pull up to the gas pump, you see the property valuations raising. Prices are going up, sales taxes are going up with them. This is the environment you're talking about increasing taxes in. Please don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a question if we were going to answer public comments tonight. We are not. It's 8:08. I will talk to the council, and I don't want to make a promise I can't fulfill, but I'm going to encourage the council to see if we can get some of those questions answered at our public meeting, or at our regular meeting on Tuesday. My concern is if we try and answer those all tonight, we will be here until 10
Not this
o'clock.
Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Sorry, next Tuesday. Thank you. The 14th. Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Before we now, Councilor Lamb, Vice President Lamb, just got here, so I just want to acknowledge him that he did make it. Congratulations as well. Boy, girl, yeah, I mean, let's end the meeting on a high. You know,
Pop Lamb.
I apologize for not being here. I really
It's okay.
do. And, I hope it was a good, productive meeting. And thank you for Jennifer, especially for jumping in and going, yes, I'm a grandpa of a granddaughter, which I've only got 4 daughters, so that's only I know that anyway. So
You got a name to share?
Adley.
Adley.
Yeah, Adley Duff. So
Adley
that's
Love.
my granddaughter. I'm very proud. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can answer?
I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your evening to come and join us, and thank you everyone up here for the really, I feel like, good discussion we had. So, thank you.
I'm just going to jump up and say thank you again to the City of Lebanon, to Mayor Gentry for making this generous room available to us today. Thanks again.
Heather.